The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests of Colorful Voices of Sisterhood are their own and do not represent L'Amour Media versatility, that of any broadcast networks utilized, its advertisers, or sponsors. All content is subject to copyright and may not be reproduced in any form without prior written consent by L'Amour Media versatility. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests of Colorful Voices of Sisterhood are for general public information and entertainment purposes only.
Welcome back to Colorful Voices of Sisterhood. Oh my gosh, it has been a busy week for everyone. I don't know if you guys got out to any of the Juneteenth celebrations, but I was fortunate enough to be a part of the presentations that was given to the city and the county. So It was just an honor to be a part of that proclamation that the city and county did for Juneteenth. Mm-hmm. So very exciting. But we have a fabulous guest here, dear friend of mine, Joe Coffey. Today's topic is LGBTQ, definitely Pride. It's definitely Pride Month. We actually had some Pride celebrations that went on in our community also. Wow. Yes, Fatia's got her colors going on. So Joe, let the audience know who you are and tell them a little bit about yourself.
Thanks. My name is Joe Coffey, and I am the Director of Community Engagement at One Place, which is a mid to large size nonprofit here in Onslow County. We moved to Onslow County about 7 years ago, having lived in Ohio for about 14 years, which is where my husband and I raised our son, who is still in Ohio. When Andrew was reaching the age where we realized he wasn't going to be living at home anymore, we thought, well, why don't we just move to the beach instead of instead of just going to visit there? So I would say, in addition to that, I have had the privilege to serve on the board for our Onslow County LGBTQ plus Community Center. Okay. That community center has actually merged since and is now part of One Pride ENC, which is in conjunction with Craven County, and I think Jones County is working with them as well. And so it's going to be a multi-county agency that can provide some services for people who are LGBTQI+.
Yeah, and I love that they're able to provide those services because, as we know, there's not a lot of resources available for persons who identify as LGBTQ. And so there's a lot of struggles, especially when you think of a teenagers that's going through those transitions. A lot of people may not know, but my son is definitely one of them. He's 17 right now, but it was something that we noticed at a very young age, that he was unique in his personality and what he was interested in. And once he became a teenager, there was really it was hard for him to find other people to identify with. So I think it's important to have that type of resource available for them, because as we know, suicide is high in the LGBTQ community, and I'm sure you could expand on that, Joe.
Sure. We were talking a little bit about this earlier. The LGBTQI community often has people who can tend to suffer a little bit because they can't find people that they identify with. They don't find people like themselves necessarily. And that isn't everyone's experience, but there is a large portion of the youth population whose story unfortunately ends in suicide. And there's another portion of that same population that I think is of great concern, because they oftentimes will tell their parents, this is my identity, this is who I am. And it's important, I think, to point out that this isn't a choice. The choice is that they have told you.
Yes.
The choice is that they're telling the truth about who they are, and they feel vulnerable to share that with you. Unfortunately, sometimes their caregiver or parent then removes them from their home, and they don't have anywhere to go, and so those children end up homeless. There's certainly a high target for sex trafficking.
Yes.
They often turn to being sex workers. They dabble in alcohol and drugs, and then unfortunately that can lead to even more health issues. It certainly can lead to a criminal issue, and they really don't have a role model or someone to turn to. So having these services in communities around the world, and certainly in communities like ours, is really important.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and especially when you talk about, I couldn't imagine, my daughter or my son coming to me and saying, that's who they identify with, and throwing them out the house. That's a child I've raised since birth, and that would be the last thing I would want them to do, is put him in harm's way. So it really, I guess it baffles me that a parent or a caregiver would do that to their child.
And this problem is not only here in the United States. I came from the Philippines, and LGBTQ communities over there is just as hard to accept. My nephew is LGBTQ. I asked him one time, when did he feel this pandemic that he's been feeling? But he told me since he was 6, 7. Can you imagine? Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I found out is, because of him being gay, they're very talented. They're smart. They're very creative. Yeah. When I was in college, also I have a friend in college. And he is the light of our group. Oh yeah. So.
Yeah, and you don't want to diminish anybody's light, neither.
Right. Right.
I was telling Joe earlier. I noticed my son at a very young age that was potentially, who he was going to be. He loved to play dress up. As he got older, as he got older, it really didn't change. He still wanted to do that. Now he's obviously 17, but he loves doing the drag competitions on the computer. He's in a safe zone because he's in my house, and I know what he's doing. So that's why I think it's so important for parents or caregivers to really, never shut their child away when they're coming to them, because sometimes you're the only trusted person that they have in their life, and if you close the door on them, it could really diminish their light.
And he enters beauty pageant. He is just having fun.
Oh yeah,
he is just having fun.
He's living his life.
And there's nothing wrong with it. There is nothing wrong with it at all.
Well, I think you brought up a great point about not shutting your children out when they come to you for advice, because they will find someone to give them advice, and it might not be advice that lines up with what you hope the lessons that you're teaching can be. And I would say you brought up another good point, and my mom would say, moms always know. Because I remember when I shared with my mom, she said, yeah, I know, and kind of went on with what she was doing. And I was really lucky. Somebody in my generation, many people in my generation, I should say, do not have great supportive relationships with their family. And I was really lucky because I did, with both my mom and my dad. It took my dad about 6 months longer to kind of come to terms with it. I think he had to think about it and process it a little bit more. Unlike my mom, his response was not, yeah, I know, although I think he probably did. And, but as it turns out, my dad became sort of a fill-in dad for a lot of our friends because they didn't have great relationships with their dad. And so that was really special.
I would like to address what you guys just said, if you guys don't mind. I'm glad that you guys have that support my question is for those parents that they don't support their children or they put them out there, why you guys, like, what do you guys think? Like, why they do that? What is that coming from? Like, okay, if you child, we know the way they act, like you, Raquel, she said, you already know that. Some people say, no, you did not born that way, the choice you made, you know, or they will say fantasy, or you have background of abuse by man or a woman. Now you confused because that is not a religious, you know, they say that because they go by what they read, the Bible, whatever, you know, if it's Christianity, Islam. I know that if you in Islam country, Saudi Arabia, if you do that, you're gonna get killed. So, what is it that why? This is how I see it. If God create, He's okay with this child to be, is still providing, is still loving. He came through me.
Yeah.
He been given to me to take care of this child, to accept. If I'm not accepting, and I'm putting this my child out because that's how he or she feel inside.
Yeah.
For sure.
Why? This is something that parents really they have to understand. If you're not, you might not agree with them. You might not, right? Because the society say you have to be with men and women. Period. Then you have to multiply to have children. The culture, the religion, belief, right? But if your child is happy and he gets a certain age, that's what makes him happy. You're not in that child's heart. Why can't we just love them? I like what you're wearing. Love is love.
Oh, thank you.
Love is love.
Yeah. So I definitely want to touch on that, Fatia, because I think religion does play a big part in how parents perceive LGBTQ in the community. So from Native American culture, we call them two spirits. And we don't disregard them as being, you know, no longer part of the community. We embrace them because they're able to walk in two worlds. They could walk in the woman's world and the man's world because we are different worlds. But as a two spirit, how we call them, we really cherish them because they got that ability to do that. So I think from Native American culture, but then when you start bringing religion into it, I think it changes the dynamics a little bit on that. Religion plays a big role in people's lives and how they perceive, you know, the LGBTQ. But to me, as a mother, and my husband will say the same thing as a father, the Creator entrusted you to care for that child. Your job is to protect that child, raise that child, and if there's something that comes in the road that's a hurdle that child has to cross, you got to be the one to help them cross that hurdle.
Love them anyway.
Love them
Pray
anyway.
for them anyway. But you know, in the Philippines,
But if you abandon them, to me, that just erases everything that they believe in because, you know, to abandon God's child is not something a Christian person should do.
I was just gonna mention something in the Philippines because parents there are very strict. They grow up, you know, in the Catholic, being in the Catholic, and a lot of people there, once they found out that their child became gay or something, number one, they would, you know, disown them. They would beat them up for some reason. But good thing about it is later on they'll accept them anyway, but the hurtful from the beginning is already there. It's already implanted to that kid's heart.
Well, and we know that you know, children's brains are not fully developed before they're 25 years old. And so having these traumatic experiences like you're describing is really having a long-term impact on their mental health, their physical health, their relationship with substances, their relationship with sex, and their ability to have healthy relationships with other people.
Yeah. So it's I guess, to me, I don't think a parent realizes the long-term effects that they're doing to their child when they shut the door on them.
Yeah, and not only that, the risk and the effect that come with the child, if they out there to be trafficked, how many diseases out there? this is still your child. It's connect to you. Is your blood. Is your flesh. And the another thing really makes me and sad in my heart is they doing of what they read. All right, that's the culture. This is what they believe. But the truth be told, nobody went here after. Okay, nobody. We just know we live it right now. This is the life that's been given to us. The fact that you're making this child that's been given to you, for you to guard them, regardless if they listen or they don't listen. There are consequences, right? This is you believe that you can present to your child to teach them, but to put them out there. But God is not going to cut, if we say the Creator, is not going to cut the blessing. They will still, it will be easier to show love, to care for them. Hey, you make these choices, since we believe hereafter it's going to be heaven or hell, but nobody been there. But all we can do is loving our children, even when we don't agree to what they're doing.
My guess is that a lot of times when people give that ultimatum of don't tell me that, or you're not going to be gay, or you can't live here anymore, they really are trying to force some sort of authority, and really believing perhaps on some level that this is a choice that their child is making, and it isn't. People are born who they are. The choice is whether or not you tell the truth about it. And so I think that sometimes parents think that they're going to be able to sort of lay down this law because these children probably have nowhere else to go. They don't have any money. They don't have a car. But the reality is it's not a choice. Their child can't change what they're sharing. And so in a way, they sort of call that bluff because there's nothing they can do about it. They're either gay or they're not, or whatever their identifier is. And so then parents are in the position of they have to decide, are they going to go ahead with the consequence that they've planned out, and unfortunately they often do.
Yeah.
And every one of us has a free agency to choose. But I'm one of the person also before that, if you are born female, you are born female. If you are born male, you are born male. Why do you change? But now I have so many friends, like I told you, I learned to accept. I learned to accept.
Yeah.
And I went through to your website, and I like when you say there, promote a positive self-acceptance. We should do that to anyone anyway, not just LGBTQ family, but any races.
It's okay. To me, I believe it's okay to have your beliefs and what you feel in, but you got to understand that everybody has their own. Everybody has their own.
And has the right.
And has the right to have their own beliefs and feelings. You either accept them or you don't.
Or stay away from
But you can't change. You can't change someone else.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I like that. If you cannot be solution, at least don't be the problem.
Don't be the
Yes.
problem.
If you cannot have something positive to add to the situation, and at least don't add anything negative for that person. Don't be the reason that person taking his life. Just don't. This is, you're right. If you're not willing to accept someone, you don't have to accept everyone. It's up to you. You see? If you cannot accept, at least stay away. Go place that it's favorable for you, your belief system. Because I believe that we all have choices to make, free will. If you make that and was in you, is you, I think nobody you shouldn't take that away from. It's like torturing somebody's soul, his happiness. Why?
Yeah.
I don't get that. This is what I don't understand when people fighting for somebody else, what he makes them who they are. Why do you want to stay that way from them?
Because they have their own opinion also.
You can have your own opinion, but your opinion does not make you right. If you came from religious background, you think that everybody go hell because they don't have the same value you do, it does not make you right. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
That's
right.
just your belief. Everybody, we're here to believe whatever we want to believe because that is our choice. It's been given to us. but it does not make someone enforce your belief system on somebody that does
somebody
not
else.
have the same how you feel within you. That is what we should understand individually. What is in you is in you.
Yeah.
And when you talk about enforcing it, what's interesting to me for people who are LGBTQI plus, that enforcement also often is really just discrimination. People enforcing their different opinion is, an example I was sharing with Raquel earlier. My husband and I got married 20 years ago in Ohio. And when we moved to North Carolina, I went to get a spouse's base pass, and I was told that they didn't recognize our marriage. But we could get married here, and then they would give me a base pass. And so it's just one of those unique things where it's like, have you ever had to worry about going to another state and getting married again to get the same rights you had as a married person in the state you left? No.
Yeah.
And the other side of that coin then often is hate crimes. Their version of enforcing that, it turns into hate crimes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, which are sometimes committed by people who are dealing with internalized homophobia because they can't deal with who they are.
I'm glad you say that.
Yeah.
People reason they suicide is not because they cannot deal with what is outside, what you cannot do with your own. Really. So to make it, life is already hard. Already, life is everyday life happen, right? Something's happening. But we do not have to be extra on somebody's life because they chose to live different than you.
Yeah.
I don't really get that.
Yeah. So
And again, they're really choosing to tell you the truth.
Yeah. They're confiding in you something that they've been probably battling internally for a long time.
Yes.
For a long time. So when you think about that, and then you're the person that they choose to tell this
you.
to. And then a person, depending on how you react, will really determine on if they're going to tell somebody else. So I think to be a trusted person for someone to come out with something that's not viewed as normal in our society, to have the courage to finally come out and tell somebody, that person on the other side needs to be willing to assist them and help them. And that's just the humanity inside us to do something like that, no matter what our beliefs are.
Yeah.
And really, sometimes your only response needs to be, "I hear you.
I hear, yeah.
You're okay.
Yeah.
You're safe with me."
Yeah.
That's
Or
a
wow,
good
that
one.
took courage for you to tell me that.
Exactly. I think another thing is we are in the society that we follow what has been written 1,000 years ago. The idea of somebody wrote. We really follow that, but we don't know. We hear. Now I can see you, Joe. I can see Agnes. I can see Raquel. This is what I know for sure. If we don't respect that, love on each other with our differences, then we're missing a lot in life. We are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, Fatia. Absolutely. Because I think for the show, this is what we're about. We talk about tough subjects that nobody talks about at the dinner table. But I think at the end of each show, what we come out with, it comes down to acceptance. You're either going to accept the person for who they are or you're not. If you choose not to, that don't mean make that person's life more difficult in it.
I think what's lacking in our society is just one word. We need to be kind.
Kindness.
Kindness.
Yeah, because I definitely would want somebody to treat me the same way I treat people. No
It
matter.
depends upon the situation, Raquel.
You're right. You're right. Okay. There might be a time or two I had to jump on the table and show myself, but
But really, yes, kindness begins with us.
yeah. And then when you talk about the resources right now, because it's difficult for a person that identifies with LGBTQ to come out in the first place. But once they do, we got to have resources available for them. It's difficult. Just like Joe mentioned. I mean, really, every state they move to, they got to prove that they're married to each other. If it's not recognized, they marry again in the state. I mean, I don't have to do that with Johnny, so why would another couple have to do that?
I will share this as an example too. When we adopted our son, even though in Ohio it was legal and perfectly accepted for same-gender couples to adopt, we had to leave the courthouse for the adoption and go across the street to an attorney and fill out a bunch of paperwork to ensure that if something happened to one of us, the other would retain custody of Andrew, because only one of us was allowed to be on the birth certificate. And so his birth certificate only has my name on it. There's no one else's name. And then for Andrew as an adult, oftentimes he's had to explain when when you have to give your birth certificate for various reasons as an adult. People are like, oh, this is a fake. There's no mother on here, or they printed you the wrong copy. And so then he has to go through this whole explanation. None of that's fair.
Yeah, it's not fair. It's not fair on the child that you guys took in when nobody else would.
You see, that's
it's really hard. When you think of a child in foster care. So I adopted 2 children. So when you think of a child in foster care, they're already feeling unloved as it is, for whatever reason why they're in there. And then you get a couple that wants to adopt a child, but then have to do all this extra stuff to do that.
Well, and it's interesting too, because when children turn 5 years old, their odds of getting adopted in this country goes down at least by half. And then every year they age, it continues to go down and down and down. And so then you have couples that look like my husband and I, who go in and say, we want to adopt a child who is at least 5 years old. And so in some states like Florida and other states right now that are outlawing same-gender adoptions or same-sex adoptions, whatever wording they're using today. It just seems so outrageous to me, because you've got this group of people who are saying, we want to adopt these children, and this other group of people who are saying, you're not capable or you're not good enough to adopt these children because of your relationship. It's ridiculous to me. And I said to Raquel earlier, as one adoptive parent to another, we had to go through all these trainings, these in-depth interviews, diving into our credit, our finances, home inspections, before we could have a child. But that's not the case for people who are having children naturally. So I would say there could be...
They have the child and leave right from the hospital to go home.
Yeah,
right away.
Probably not as well prepared as Steve and I were after a year of different kinds of trainings and inspections and all these things. So it just seems ridiculous to me. But
and it is. I'm gonna let and I think it's ridiculous, and I believe that it's not legal. I really don't believe that's legal to do that. When you look at our Constitution, and it's something I believe in, because, I served 26 and a half years in the Marine Corps to defend that Constitution and make sure everybody has the equal rights that they need. That a person born in the United States, no matter what their gender is or who they identify with, is still a United States citizen. And they fall under the Constitution and the rights afforded to them. So for someone in another state, and Florida I'm really looking at right now, because that's where my son wants to go to school. And it's not looking good for him, especially if he identifies as LGBTQ. I don't believe he'll be safe there. And as a mother, that's something you want to ensure is your child is safe. And if they're going to look at him like he don't have the same rights as everybody else, and something that I served 26 and a half years to defend, to make sure everybody has that right, that infuriates me.
yeah,
It really does.
So what can we do to make it change to that? What can we do?
I think we're doing it. We're having a
Talking about
conversation, and we're normalizing the conversation, and making it available for other people to hear and think about. I think that really is the first step, is to just bring people together and say, let's talk about this, and ask the question you want to ask, whatever it is. And if I can't answer it, I will say I don't know. I can't speak for X, Y, or Z. But if I can, I'll tell you what I think is true. and then let's go from there, you know, and be kind to me, and
Yeah.
I'll be kind to you.
Yeah,
You know?
there you go. Mhm.
You're right. If we put inside the judgmental and this what is gonna happen here and after, if we really sit down and listen to one another, heart to heart, you know, even the hardest conversation, I think we can talk about it. We can. And to me, it should not be hard for somebody. It shouldn't. If something that you are, to speak to you, Joe, it should not be hard. Like, this is you, this is me. Why? It shouldn't be difficult to communicate about it.
Yeah.
You know, the more we show, if we try to guard someone, I'm speaking of, because I came from both belief system, Islam and Christian. Okay, I saw both what they did when they speak of religion. They didn't do well. I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
And if you don't guard people the way God He wants us, with love and kind, God He never enforce on people. If He does, we will not be here. No, just honestly, we will not be here. How many people think about getting up and it's gonna hurt people? He would have taken it. Go back and sleep. We're not gonna get up. But guess what? He gave us free will because He does not enforce on us. So if believe people that have that belief system, they should be more like him or she or whomever you identify with. What I'm trying to say is it should never be hard to communicate with anybody something that is you. You don't agree to that, that's fine. We don't have to agree to everything. I don't have to agree with what everything he's doing with his life. But at least I can respect for who you are.
Love, respect, and kind. Yeah.
Love
that's
is
it.
about being kind
Yeah.
and loving your fellow human beings. And, you know, and it's funny because there's so much diversity in the world around us.
Yes.
And you can find the best allies and the worst enemies where you
Yeah.
least expected it. And so I recently, I have this neighbor, he lives across the street. He passed away just recently, but he was in his 90s. And when we bought our house, Steve was up on the roof doing whatever he was doing. And I was out in the yard. And so our neighbor came across the street and, you know, introduced himself and told me about his family. And then, so, you know, I told him about my family. And he said, well, who lives in this house? And I said, my husband and I do. And he's like, oh. And so he talked on for a few minutes, and then he said, but who lives in this house? And so I said, my husband
And I.
and I live in this house. And so the light bulb went on. And this is a man in his 90s who was, shared with me that he was very conservative, and that he was very religious, and that he was a Republican. And he and I ended up being the best of friends.
Nice.
And because we talked to each other the way the four of us are talking now, like he wanted to know things and would ask in a respectful, appropriate way. I wanted to know what his thinking was and what brought him to that, and I would ask in a respectful and kind way. And so again, you know, you can find allies in the best places.
Oh yeah. And I think that's important to bring out is you could have different views, but you could still be friends.
Yes.
You
Absolutely.
know, there's
That
some
is how-
commonality in there.
Yeah.
That is how it's supposed to be.
Absolutely.
Instead of hating each other.
Yeah.
Because
they're different.
Yes.
Or because their views don't align with yours.
Exactly.
Right.
You know? Mm-hmm.
I think we should be natural in who we are, and not. That's when the anxiety come, the pressure come, because we're hiding. Because if we say something true about ourselves, people they will not accept us. But guess what? It's only you. Nobody like you. And I think that we should be proud. When I say proud, not egotistic, but proud to say, you know what? I'm not perfect. I will never be perfect, but I will be okay with me,
Yeah.
with myself.
Yeah. So when you look, you know, now, you know, you're thinking it's 2023 and we look around at, you know, what's going on in our country and some states, you know, trying to ban, the big one is the drag.
Yeah.
dressing like drag. A lot of states are fighting to change that. And to me, I see nothing wrong with it. I don't see nothing wrong with someone putting on their makeup, wearing a wig, and wearing a nice gown.
So what is wrong with that? Because I didn't hear that. So what's wrong with that? Why they have issues with trying to, because of the makeup, because of the look?
Well, I think it's because of a man dressing like that.
Oh.
Because they don't look
That's the
fabulous as
issue.
women. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, they're looking good though.
Yeah, they're looking great.
And my son, he does that. So when I say I provide him a safe space to do that, he does do drag competitions and that type of stuff. But in the reading, even in the state of North Carolina, they're talking about that. But they're really viewing it as a sexuality type thing. I think it's the people who don't know about it perceive it that way. And that's not the case at all. It's just another way of expressing themselves. Just like, why do we dress up at Halloween?
Right.
That's a good point.
Why do they have a skimpy nurse outfit when we know that's not how nurses dress at the hospital?
Yes.
Why do we have tight-fitting cat outfits when we
Yes.
know that's not how a cat looks? So what I'm saying is they choose to pick what's
They fit them. They
that
choose and
fits
pick
them.
So this is again. I'm not trying to attack any religious and stuff. I'm not. But that what you just say, people pick and choose
Yes.
what they want to talk about. Sometimes they connect it what is favorable to them, or they have better argument. Oh, you're doing this because this is not how men should dress. Record to what? Then they have something that can back them up.
Yeah.
Record to whatever they believe. This is what says. You see?
What I think is fascinating about the drag argument is America has always been in love with drag queens.
Oh yeah.
If you think back to movies like Some Like It Hot, if you think back to movies or TV shows like Milton Berle, Mrs. Doubtfire, you could go on and on, but America's always loved drag queens. But when I say that, it's in the context of comedy. And what makes people uncomfortable is when they don't think it's a comedic setting. And I would say that, drag is an art form, and it's not something that I do, but I have lots of friends who participate in it, and it's fascinating. It's fun.
Yeah,
and
it
it is
love
art.
it. I love it that you said it's an art form, because it is an art form, because it takes skill to do that. When I watch my son and how we could transform the way he looks, I'm like, oh my gosh, you should be in Hollywood, to do that type of stuff. But to me, it's a way that a person expresses themselves, and for any government. So once again, I'm gonna get frustrated with the government. But to take that freedom of expression away from somebody, who, I guess no one should have that ability to do that from anybody. No matter what their gender is, who they identify as, it's still a form of expression. So is it okay for me to put on a wig and makeup and a nice gown and go out? And yes, it'd be perfectly fine.
It would be. And Dolly Parton even has said,
Yes.
I don't see the difference between me and a drag queen. I wear outrageous wigs. I wear heavy makeup. I wear revealing clothes. I don't get the difference.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And that was a great point for her to bring out that.
Right. I guess whatever makes you happy, go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
Another
Be
thing
who
is
you are.
Yeah.
another thing is people, they should look, especially government, and what is they really doing. They are hurting people, they are shooting, they are killing. So if it's dangerous, something that's gonna cost, you can say like, this is not safe. But if this is helping someone, why is the issues? I don't see it.
Yep. But to me, when you exclude certain individuals, that there is segregating them and causing a form of hate on those individuals.
Yeah.
So I don't think in that aspect that our government's doing its due diligence in protecting a population of our people.
Yeah, it's definitely a marginalized population. It's definitely a population that has few resources sort of dedicated. And I think to go back to what I heard a little bit in what you were saying, when you asked what do we do, of course normalizing the conversation and beginning to have safe places where people can have conversations is one step. But we really need to raise protective factors for these children and their families and provide concrete supports. We need to think about ways that we can create social networks for these families. And I was sharing with Raquel earlier, one of the larger or more quickly growing populations in our county are families that look like mine. Same gendered parents coming here. My child is not gay. My family is not gay. I'm gay. My husband's gay. And so being able to access resources where my child can see families like his would have gone a huge way when Andrew was a child. He's not a child anymore, but I think being able to think about how can we raise those protective factors for all families.
For all families, that's right.
Yeah.
And then when I think of a child that, because it's not normal. It's not normal to see two dads and the son. So I'd be curious to see how his childhood was. Was he bullied because of that? Was he?
So we made a couple of mistakes along the way, I think, and the first one is
All
that
parents do.
Yeah, we moved to a rural part of Ohio to raise Andrew, and we chose to do that because the school district had a great reputation for working with children who had special needs.
Okay.
And so Andrew was 7 when we started our visitation, and we already knew that he had some special needs, that he would need support to attend a public school. So we had a house built, we moved there, and it didn't occur to us because we were so comfortable in who we were that we were adopting a black child and moving into a primarily white
Oh, yeah.
area, and even fewer couples and families that look like ours. And there was only one, to my knowledge, family where there were 2 moms that were open in the same way that Steve and I were. And so Andrew, in looking back, he did get bullied for having 2 dads. And of course, people would say, oh, you're gay. And they would say that in a derogatory way to him. And I remember him coming home one day and he was upset because a boy that he considered to be a friend, this child had been at our house, Andrew had been at his house, started making fun of him and saying that he was gay and also making fun of him for being black. And Andrew was upset about both things.
Yeah.
And so I remember having the conversation with him and I said, are you gay? And he said no. And I said, well, that's the end of that. I mean, whatever, it doesn't matter what he says, you already know.
How old is he now?
He'll be 25 on his birthday.
Wow.
So he was probably 9 when this happened.
Yeah.
And so I said, are you black? And he said yes. And I said, well, that's the end of that. And so he did have some experiences that we didn't really think about and weren't prepared for.
Yeah.
But we also, I think, provided him with a lot of counseling and a lot of supports. The school was great. They were somewhat fascinated with our family, and I think they were a little bit worried that we might sue them because we, before Andrew came to live with us, I called and asked to take a tour of the school, and they were like, "Why? This is the school." And I said, "Well, but I might not want to send him there. We may want to send him somewhere else."
Yeah.
And so on this tour, which had already made them uncomfortable, I said, how do you teach about diversity, equity, and inclusion? And, keep in mind, this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And there was no acceptable answer to that. And so I said, that's not an acceptable answer.
Yeah.
We are going to enroll our son here, but I will be following up on a regular basis about that. So I think Andrew felt like I had set up an adversarial relationship with the school district to start with. But it turned out great.
But yeah.
They were awesome with Andrew. The teachers were great. He did have a lot of fun. He played football, he played basketball, he played baseball. He had a lot of friends.
Yeah.
So it turned out fine.
That's good. But when you think about, his friend that was with them, obviously the friend didn't have an issue with it until someone else put it in his head.
His dad, unfortunately.
Yeah. And that's what we got to be careful of, because, as an adult, you have so much, I don't want to say power over a child, but so much influence over a child, that's where hate can derive from, is just you mentioning a comment, whether it's about someone's race, their disability, how they live their life, that could potentially set that child on a different course that they wouldn't have normally taken. So it's really got to be cautious of what you say around young adults or minds that are growing, because you don't want to create I don't want to say a hateful individual, but you don't want to create animosity in a child that doesn't exist. And that's where a lot of it comes from, is learned behavior.
For sure. Children learn hate and discrimination from the adults in their lives.
Well said, Raquel. Yeah, I like that.
I like that. I think it's good to have parents like you have in accepting your children and love on them.
Yeah.
And you might not agree with the decision they make, but at least love and care for them. I mean, when they get to a certain age, they will go on with their life regardless, and have that impact on them. My mom, like you say, you came from that. Look at you today. How many people that didn't have that support, they're not even here today. So don't be the reason your child will lose his life.
Yeah. And I think it's important for us to also mention that there's always the person, the loudest in the room, is probably the one that shouldn't be. So and they're always the loudest ones. So we, the ones who know we're doing right, we got to start being more vocal about it. When we go into a room and we hear something that's not quite right, that, we probably, stand up and say something. I think it's time, we're at that point now where no one should be afraid to say what their opinions are or what their beliefs are. Never let the person who is being the loudest of the room, but is not portraying the love and kindness that we want to share. I'm going to make a vow right now. I'm going to call them out on it. Because I think it's time. It's time that, we don't let the loudest person in the room be the one to dictate how everybody should feel.
And that covers a lot of subjects, not just LGBT.
Oh, yeah, not just that, But you're right. There's so much, even on social media now, when you look at social media, especially when it was during the election phase of it, oh my gosh, I had to turn it off, because it was just some people saying the same stuff that, it's to the point where you get tired of fact checking them about it. And it's always, why are they always the loudest ones,
Absolutely.
Because we have opinion about certain things, it does not make it right. I mean, to me, we all came from different background.
Sure.
Different race, different the way we get raised, and people have life before us. We have to be mindful and respectful, and about how we treat one another, how we communicate one another. If you don't have nice thing to say, probably we have to be quiet and listen.
Yeah.
There you go.
I would say, sort of thinking about my experience as an educator, I always would remind parents of this, and I think it's important that we think about this period, but the children in our community are listening to us.
They are.
And even when we think, they're too young, they don't understand, they're hearing. And so we have to be modeling what's appropriate.
Yes, I agree. That's why I was saying, don't let the other person be the loudest person in the room. Don't let them. And then, children, they fascinate me. When you look at how much they learn just in their first 5 years of life, all the learning that takes place, they're little sponges. They just absorb, and so you're absolutely right, Joe. They're watching. They
remember things for sure.
Yeah. And they're watching the parents.
We are open book to our children. We really are. We think like, they don't listen, they're not watching, they're taking note. They do.
Yeah, they do.
Well, I was just going to say that whoever is thinking, or maybe not thinking, or feeling that they would love to transition into, gay thing, they need to prepare themselves, because number one, they are going to lose family, they are going to lose friends, they get bullied. So you gotta prepare yourself. You gotta prepare yourself. You need to be strong and look for resources.
And I would say there are other people like you who do live in this community.
I'm glad,
And, you need to look for those people. You need to find a social circle and a set of concrete supports that works for you.
Yes.
Yeah, don't be alone.
Another thing I would like to say, if it takes to lose everybody to find you true, please do it. Lose, because they're not going to go nowhere. But your life is very important. It's only you. No, it's really like, hey, people come and go. Sometimes you leave your own family. So don't take your life because of somebody else. They might not like you, or you losing community. Always is other community that is going to love you, accept you for who you are.
Yes, yes.
Follow your heart.
And the resources, when you think about the resources at our fingertips, you have it. Like right now, Joe let us know of our community right now that's got the One
Pride ENC.
One Pride ENC that covers our community, but I'm sure your community has something too. So definitely do that research, get connected, get the resources you need. And I definitely want to put out there, just in case someone out there is struggling right now, that there is the hotline that you can call is 988. You could call there. That's the suicide hotline that we have established in the United States. And we also have 211. 211 is a resource provided by United Way that you could call and ask for help that you may need, whether it's mental health, whether it's food service, whether it's finding a place to live. So those two numbers are very important to remember and keep at your fingertips on that. But Joe, it's been such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for inviting me to be here today.
Yes. So do you have any closing words you want to provide our audience?
I would say, you kind of said it best. Be who you are, love who you are, and be kind to each other. And the resources are out there. You may have to look a little harder, but they're there. And so I would encourage people to look for the types of resources that work for them and their family.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you for being here. And this is a subject that is definitely ongoing in your government, probably at church, your workspace, but definitely do your research on it, know the facts, and most importantly, let your legislation know where you stand, that everybody should be created equal no matter how they choose to live their life. So on that note, we are going to close this topic. And next week, we are going to be discussing dating over 50.
50, yes.
Well, I'm glad I don't have to date over 50. But we are going to have Naomi Thompson coming on to discuss that topic. So definitely tune in next week. We look forward to having you. And once again, LGBTQ, do your research on it and support who you can, where you can.
We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
At L'Amour Media Versatility, we aim to provide comprehensive solutions to our clients. We have a team of experienced professionals who can help you with every aspect of your media needs. From documentation and marketing to promotion and more, we provide our clients with top-notch quality services. We understand that each client is unique and has specific needs. That's why our team works closely with you to understand your company and event goals and objectives. We are committed to providing the highest quality services in media and strive to exceed our clients' expectations. Our team is passionate about helping you reach your goals and making sure you get the best experience and results. If you're looking for a reliable business to help you with all your media needs, look no further than Lamore Media Versatility. Contact us today to get started at 252-497-3817 or at www.lamore-photos.com.